Hi everyone, after I updated my Sinuhoop with a DJI O3 camera, I wanted to find out how it performs compared to my Runcam Thumb Pro W. In this first shot we have a sunset situation. Both cameras are set to 3840 by 2160 UHD resolution at 30 frames per second in auto mode and wide field of view. The Thumb uses a 30 frames per second timecode, while the O3 has a 29.97 timecode. Be aware when you mix different material. This video was created in a 30 frames per second timecode. To avoid having to make endless comparison videos, I recorded most of the videos in 16:9 with 3840 by 2160 pixels. At the end I make a comparison in 4:3 with Gyroflow. My O3 recorded UHD videos with a bitrate between 60 and 100 Mbit per second, the Thumb at 60 Mbit per second. You can see that, in this situation, the O3 is more accurate in terms of color and has a wider field of view. The Thumb is a bit darker in auto mode. Pointed directly into the sun, the Thumb does its job a bit better. The dynamic range seems a bit wider. The O3 looks a bit oversaturated, while the Thumb looks a bit washed out, which can probably be easier corrected in post-production at oversaturated colors. The Thumb has much more visible lens flares. Both cameras do not perform so well in a dark building. Despite anti-flicker setting at 50 Hz, both cameras flicker when recording at 30 frames per second. Here you should switch to 25 frames per second when your lamps run at 50 Hz. In low light, the Thumb unfortunately has the characteristic of sometimes producing noisy stripe patterns. The O3 does not do this, but produces rougher noise and loses more details. For comparison, the noise of the O3 at 300% zoom. The O3 is generally less sharp in the dark. In auto ISO, both cameras show strong noise, the Thumb rather a small-grained noise, the O3 rather a large-grained noise. The O3's colors are too warm here, while the Thumb's are a little too cool. In this scene, looking towards the sun, we again have the case that the O3 does not see the sun behind the clouds, while the Thumb has a better dynamic range. But with the sun, the image of the O3 is again too oversaturated, and that of the Thumb appears too washed out with standard color style. I noticed that in this situation the Thumb produces some image noise, even in sunshine. This reminds me of the SM04K, which has the same problem, but which may no longer be visible after YouTube compression. To check this and make sure that the Thumb does not turn the ISO value too high, I will set the ISO value to 200 on the next flight. Here I equipped both cameras with an ND16 filter and set the exposure to ISO 200 at 1/60th shutter speed. Unfortunately, even with these settings, there was still a slight amount of noise in the Thumb, better visible at 500% magnification. You can try out at which YouTube resolution the noise is no longer visible and whether this still plays a role for your image. On the other hand, I think that you can still see more details in the grass with the Thumb, even though it records at a lower bit rate. A special feature of the O3 is that it can record at 120 frames per second at 3840p. The Thumb can only do this at 1080p. Here both images are overlaid with a working area of 3,842,160 pixels. As you can see, the difference in quality is enormous. This is particularly noticeable in the zoomed-in full-screen view. The Thumb produces a consistently poorer image. It also produces a black bar at the bottom, which I don't know how it can occur. Here I have reduced the speed to 25% to get a 30 frames per second clip from the 120 frames per second clip. I would not recommend using this mode with the Thumb. With the O3, however, the image looks almost as good as with a UHD resolution at 30 frames per second. Only in low light, you can forget about slow motion because then everything gets very dark. Both cameras cannot record in 4K with a 4:3 aspect ratio. The O3 crops the image section as soon as the frame rate is set to 100 frames per second or 120 frames per second. In order to use as much of the sensor as possible, I prefer to record at 30 frames per second in this case, which also corresponds to the thumb settings. Although the O3 offers the option of recording in a super wide FOV, I only selected wide FOV here, as Gyroflow unfortunately cannot stabilize super wide. All settings are set to manual, except for the white balance, which is set to automatic. I selected a flat color profile for both cameras to see which one offers better contrast. While the O3 is limited to 2.7K in 4:3, the Thumb uses a trick to create a 4:3 image, which they call X-View. With these settings, a 4:3 image is recorded that uses the full sensor size. Since, according to Thumb, the processor is not able to record the full 4:3 image, it is squeezed to a 16:9 image. Gyroflow can later resize this image back to 4:3, stabilize it and create a 16:9 video from it. Because the 4:3 image of the Thumb is squeezed to 16:9, the noise is significantly lower. Both cameras are set to the lowest sharpness level. The O3 produces a significantly blurrier image, which is why I would not recommend the sharpness setting -2. However, with post-stabilization using Gyroflow, more details would be lost anyway, as with any image stabilization using software. In the last scene, I stabilized the two clips from before using Gyroflow with the settings visible here for the O3 and with these settings for the Thumb. These are the standard settings of Gyroflow in version 1.5.4. Gyroflow turns it into a stabilized 16:9 video. The Thumb video has a resolution of 3840p and the O3 video has a resolution of 2.7K. As you can see, the image noise of the Thumb has completely disappeared due to the multiple processing of the video. I don't want to go into details about Gyroflow in this video, but I think that Gyroflow can usually stabilize the O3 recordings better, even with optimized settings. I can't say why this is the case. Regardless of the fact that the O3 also contains a complete transmission and RC control system for the copter, the image quality is very similar. At least when filming in 3840p. The advantage of the O3 is much better quality in slow motion and less noise in daylight, while the Thumb has the better dynamic range and an built-in audio recorder. All the sound in this video only came from the Thumb. You can save some time in post-production with the O3 as it has an option for internal stabilization if you don't want to use Gyroflow. With the O3, I feel the need to use the flat color profile so that everything is not so oversaturated and the black values don't drop so much. If you have an aircraft on which you would like to record the flights with a lightweight camera independently from the FPV system, or you have an analog quad that needs to record HD footage and can't carry a GoPro, the Thumb may still be a viable choice. For those who fly FPV digitally anyway, I see no reason why you should get a Thumb.